Today we're going to be bridging the psychological and spiritual aspects of your psyche to bring better understanding and more accessible practice for yourself as you go through this spiritual, personal journey. This episode is going to be focused upon id, ego, superego, as well as how they relate to your layers of consciousness, from the unconscious mind to the conscious mind to the subconscious mind to the superconscious mind, and then overall to consciousness and raising to higher states of consciousness. Let's begin with, where does the ideology of id, superego, and ego come from? Its origin comes from Sigmund Freud. It was created in 1923, helping bring what we call now as id, ego, and superego. Now let's begin on the term id. What does id represent? Id is the fundamental nature of who you are. It has to deal with your raw emotions, your primal instincts. These come from influences of things of your basic needs, such as food, hunger, sex, things that are required for your immediate survival. The reactions that you are naturally embedded with as you are born. Oftentimes you would find these behaviors most prevalent in babies or animals that rely solely on their instincts for their survival. It may project itself as an immediate need or immediate desire that must be acted upon. In a spiritual analysis, this represents the person or the individual who is unconscious, who is living in a constant state of cycles. What do we mean by cycles? How they live is entirely based upon their need. There is nothing more and there is nothing less than exactly what is needed for their survival, as this is the source of id. So when we try to imagine what our id factor looks like, think about all the times of reactions that you had or felt that you had no control over. The reactions or the state of being that you go into whenever a need arises, in whatever way, be it financial, career-wise, spiritually, personally, emotionally, because they affect how you are, how you speak, how you carry yourself, how you portray yourself on a daily basis. This is a reflection of how your id, your raw instincts, can influence or have this much influence in your life. This happens because you are a human being. It is human nature to first understand the need that is survival. However, it is an unconscious process. What we work towards when it comes to id is to understanding it and becoming conscious of this id, becoming aware that these emotions, these instincts are there. They may not all be known to you right now. However, we acknowledge that they are there. That's why we call them the id factor. Remember, id, or your raw instincts, are developed in your early childhood days. Some things that you may not even be aware of as yet. However, they solely come from this area of your life, or moments of big impact or significance, possibly triggering events. Now, let's move on to the ego. What is the ego? Why is the ego important in this trinity that is the id, ego, and superego? Why is the ego of value to us? The ego is the structure, or you can envision it like this. You've built a house over a period of time, be it your age, be it whoever you are. You've been building a house. And as you've built that house, you've also been simultaneously building a fence to protect that house, to place your sense of self in that area of your life. That aspect of you that you feel that you can control. That aspect of you that you can bring change to. It's a foundation of all that you are, as well as your present experience, the things that you are constantly experiencing on a daily basis, as well as things in the past. All of this makes up what we call the ego. The ego can also be called the persona, because the ego has to deal with regulating emotions, our decision-making skills, how we approach something, be it an event, a problem, a challenge, or possibly a good thing. How all of these reactions are made can help us gain better insight into our ego. Where is our ego? Our ego lays in the subconscious realm of our mind. Where or what is the subconscious? The subconscious mind has to deal with emotional healing, emotional trauma, possibly triggering events, where we can place subconscious holds on how we approach our life on a daily basis. The subconscious realm is responsible for how you approach your relationships, how your emotional intelligence is, how much you're capable of being creative, how much you can express your passion without making it something that develops into trauma, something that hinders you instead of helps you grow. Now back to ego, our sense of self, how we define ourselves, and how that person is projected. Now, ego can go from being healthy ego to becoming an unhealthy ego. Now, how do you interpret or understand an unhealthy ego? This stems from a mind or individual that is neglectful of change, may be fearful of change, may feel shame or guilt, or some negative emotion that helps, in fact, foster what we could call toxic ego or unhealthy ego. An ego that feeds no one, not even the user. Because within this ego, the person becomes self-hateful, the person becomes unsettled, incapable of decisions, incapable of having motivation in their daily life. That's how important an ego plays in this trinity. It is the medium or bridge that helps link your rawest emotions, your instincts, your fears, things that you're unconscious of, to reality. And from there, it formulates how your reality is manifested and how well you work within that reality. Now, how do we formulate a balance between our rawest emotions, and reality. Where does a balance come? Do we only have a part of our psyche for the rawest of emotions or instincts? No. What we have next is called the superego or supermoral. In the spiritual realm, we can call this the superconscious. It speaks into the part of your psyche that governs goals, that gives you a sense of direction, a sense of destination. And sometimes it may be a sense of hope, a sense of responsibility, a sense of willpower, a sense of authenticity, being able to express yourself truly as you desired, not as it is conflicted or corrupted by id becoming the dominating factor, but it is being regulated by what it is you truly desire and reality. This is the supermoral or superego. You can think of it as your angel. You can think of it as consciousness. You can think of it as God. You can think of it as some significant thing, person, whatever it is that may connect you to that higher self. What do we mean by a higher self? This is going from having a sense of self to now making a balance within self. Meaning self is not the objective, it is part of the journey. Just like how it is placed in the specific order of id, ego, and superego, this is how you need to think of it when approaching it. The rawest emotions, its regulator, and how we are presently, and superego, its goal, its true desires, without the influences or reactions or things that may cause us to not have that reality that we truly desired, because we feel that we cannot reach that goal, we cannot live up to that sense of expectation, that sense of responsibility, that sense of willpower. Now I'd like you to think of this superego as a teacher or role model in your life. It could be focused upon one thing, it can be focused upon an array of things. Think of a role model or something that has given you a sense of humility and insight because of its wisdom. When you think of that, now I'd like you to envision every time a choice is made in your life, in your day, every second of choice is governed or shown in good or bad. You may hear the good as your super morale telling you what feels like the right thing to do, what you subconsciously know is the right thing to do, but may be unconscious of. Sometimes it may be interpreted as a voice of reason, bringing standards and values, developing through socialization, as well as parental influence. Remember, this is part of the superconscious. And in this superconscious side of our psyche, it involves what we bring a sense of unity, where we speak about being formless. That's what we speak about in the superconscious. Transcending and having a sense of higher purpose, or what we call as the higher self in superego, which is also another thing that you can regulate as you now bring conscious awareness to this trinity and how they play a part in your life, Where do you feel you are on the scale of id, ego, and superego? Do you feel id is your dominating factor? Do you feel like superego is where you reside more? Do you feel like ego is mostly what's running? Meaning there is a fence built up that you are not allowing change or growth to happen, be it consciously or unconsciously. Unconsciously, you'll see it externally in your life, how you feel and how you react. Observe those behaviors. It is recommended highly that you find a balance in between this trinity. This trinity is responsible for how you would like to be on a daily basis. Thus, it's entirely dependent upon your experience. And how do we formulate a greater or change of experience now using these factors? As I mentioned throughout this episode, we've used spiritual states of unconscious, the parts that you may not be aware of, the memories or experiences in your life that you have hidden away unconsciously, that you've been living in what feels now like a cycle that you are now becoming conscious of. You are seeing habits in yourself that you don't know where they came from. You don't understand how they came to be. That's the unconscious spiritual state. The conscious mind is aware of these things. They are now mindful. Bring in a higher state of feeling, a sense of drive, confidence to the person, because they are now becoming an owner of themselves. They are now knowing themselves. For the subconscious, this has to deal with the emotional state, the emotional intelligence, and the creativity it brings through the passions that you have in life. You can be passionate about many different things. Sometimes, subconsciously, these things are hidden off, or they are placed with triggers to avoid possible growth or change that has been knocking at your door. This is what we refer to as the subconscious state of mind. Remember, emotional trauma, sensuality, how you react with people, how you react in your relationships. Creativity, how you express yourself when it comes to showing passion, be it for a person, a thing, an event, a career, whatever it is you show your passion in. Let your creativity, let your unique sense of creativity blossom. Next, we're speaking into the superconscious, our sense of unity, our sense of endless exploration and expansion, transcending what we feel as limits, because we have established that there are always going to be changes in our lives. We have established that this conscious being is now capable of becoming part of consciousness, which is the superconscious, which is your higher self, your true intentions behind everything that is done in your life. That sense of reason, that voice of positivity, that feeling you get when you may feel guilty or ashamed, when you feel a sense of responsibility. These polarities, these opposites, help bring together your super morale, your super conscious, because now you have built a conscious state through which you have experienced all these different realms of consciousness. And within each realm, you have approached it and desired or sought to move beyond it, manifesting willpower within yourself, creating motivation. This is your superego. And your ego now is the present you, who is learning from both the superego, your sense of reason, and your id, your survival instincts. Remember, all of them are useful towards your daily living, towards your daily joy, towards your daily acceptance and transformation in life. However, they must be balanced. No one should be neglected. Try to bring awareness to each side of your psyche. In spirituality, trinities are a very common thing. Beyond religions, beyond occults, beyond communities, trinities are a very common thing used. And the id, ego, and superego is another form in this trinity expression of a higher self, the medium, how we regulate and bring what it is we learned from that superego and our id factor, being conscious of those two sides, to build a better being, to build a better understanding of self, and then moving beyond self to where we can be selfless, compassionate, joyous, free-spirited, self-expressive, truthful, authentic being the person that you truly desired, without being forced into things that you have no intention of being, doing, feeling. However, you indulge in it because you don't know any better. You're not aware. We call this the unconscious state of mind. Take time, replay this episode as much as you need. Take notes, journal about it. Practice asking yourself questions when it comes to approaching the id, ego, and superego, as well as using the spiritual states that we mentioned. You can also use the chakra systems when it comes to bringing correlation to id, ego, superego, and the chakra systems, as they have to do with your raw instincts, which is dealt from the first three chakras. The first to the third chakra has to deal with survival instincts, which is your id factor. All the raw instincts and emotions that are naturally developed in you. The fourth chakra, which regulates emotions, how you react, how you approach people, how you approach situations. This is the stable foundation that we spoke about, that you've built with fences around. This is the ego, and it can be an ego that is closed off, or it can be an ego or a boat sailing on the ocean. This boat has no specific destination. It has a journey. However, within that journey, pathways may change, tides may change. The weather will never be the same. At the end of the journey, change will happen not only for the sailor or for the captain, it will also happen for that boat. This is why compassion is an essential thing when it comes to your ego and fostering growth within yourself. Compassion is the first step, as well as being able to voice your compassion with authenticity, bring in expression and healthy communication when it is time for you to share this information, when it is time for you to speak to anyone, be it you're a motivational speaker, a leader, whatever the case may be, where you are in the position of bringing communication skills. This will be important when you're building a healthy ego. Now let's move on to the superego part. So the superego in the chakra systems will lay between the 6th and the 7th chakra in the spiritual sense of the superconscious, because it has to deal with a higher state of consciousness, bringing insight, intuition, and what we refer to as cosmic awareness or ultimate awareness of all that is, not just for yourself, but for everything that is. Everything that is. Truly take time to understand everything that is. This is why the superego plays an important role within this trinity. This sense of direction, of cosmic intelligence, brings such revolutionary change to your psyche. It brings evolution, capability to now your present being. It brings a chance for growth and higher consciousness for yourself and others. The superego will help grow the ego, as well as the id will help inform the ego of potential triggers, or potential fears, or potential desires or instincts, because the id helps project a need. The ego asks, is this a need or is this a want? Is this me? And the super morale, yes, this is you. No, this isn't you. You're doing this because of. You're doing this not because it's not your true intention. We speak on regulating all these factors through our chakra system. You can use the chakra systems, you can use different religions, occults. They have practices through which they help bring emotional healing, bring in self-compassion and well-being, as well as growth for your sense of direction, your superego, having better sense of morale, leading to a better you, leading to that change that you've always desired. Remember, take your time as you approach this. It is for personal development. It is for spiritual development. It is for your development. This is your Formless Guide, signing off.